The RMS Titanic, a marvel of early 20th century engineering, set sail on her maiden voyage from Southampton to New York City on the 10th of April 1912. The ship was the pride of the White Star Line, celebrated for its luxury and size. On board there were over 2,200 passengers and crew, a mix of the wealthy elite and hopeful immigrants. All were eager to make the historic journey on the largest and most luxurious ship afloat. Four days into the voyage, at 11:40 p.m. on the 14th of April 1912, disaster struck. The Titanic collided with a massive iceberg. The impact caused a series of fatal breaches along the starboard side of the hull. Water poured into the ship's lower compartments, setting in motion a chain of events that would lead to one of the most infamous maritime disasters in history. As the hours passed, it became clear that the Titanic was doomed. The lifeboats were launched, but there were not enough for everyone to board. Panic ensued as the stern of the ship began to lift out of the water, as the bow was dragged down by the weight of the flooding compartments. At approximately 2:20 a.m. on the 15th of April, the Titanic broke in two. The bow plunged to the ocean floor, taking with it many passengers and crew. In a miraculous twist, the stern did not follow suit. Instead of sinking, it stabilised, remaining afloat by the remaining air trapped in its compartments. For the 1,500 people still clinging to the ship, hope returned. The stern floated in the frigid Atlantic. Among those in the stern was Second Officer Charles Lightoller, who took charge in organising the survivors. Despite the dire situation, he and other crew members worked to maintain order and keep spirits up. Earlier that night, the Titanic had sent out distress signals. The RMS Carpathia, a Cunard Line vessel, responded immediately, altering course to assist the stricken liner. Arriving at dawn, the Carpathia found the Titanic's stern still afloat. The Carpathia's crew worked tirelessly to rescue the survivors, pulling them from the lifeboats and the deck of the still floating stern. By mid-morning, all remaining passengers and crew had been safely transferred to Carpathia, which then set sail for New York. Word of the Titanic spread quickly, and soon another White Star liner, the RMS Olympic, arrived on the scene. The Olympic was Titanic's sister ship, nearly identical in design. With the stern of the Titanic still afloat, a decision was made to attempt to salvage what remained of the once great ship. Several people from the Olympic boarded Titanic's stern. They conducted a thorough inspection to assess its seaworthiness and determine if it could be towed back to port. Despite the extensive damage, the stern was deemed stable enough for towing. The compartments had been sufficiently sealed off, and emergency repairs were made to ensure the ship would not take on more water during the journey. With cables and towing lines secured, the Olympic began the slow task of towing the Titanic's stern back to Belfast, the city where she had been constructed. The constant threat of further structural failure was present. However, the experienced crews of both ships managed to keep the stern afloat and on course. As they neared the coast, News of the Titanic's miraculous partial survival spread, and crowds gathered at the docks of Belfast. The sight of the stern, battered but afloat, brought mixed emotions. There was relief that part of the great ship had survived, but also a sombre reflection on the lives lost. Upon arrival in Belfast, a more comprehensive inspection was conducted. The decision to rebuild the Titanic was not taken lightly. The costs were substantial, but the alternative of constructing a new ship from scratch would have been even more expensive due to the valuable machinery housed within the stern. The shipyard workers, many had helped to build the Titanic originally, set to work. The stern was carefully stabilised and the damaged sections removed. A new bow, designed with improved safety features, was constructed. This process was reminiscent of the SS Suvik, another ship which had been partially rebuilt. On a clear day in 1914, the Titanic was relaunched to much fanfare. The ship, now sporting a brand new bow, looked as majestic as she had ever had on her first maiden voyage. Shipyard workers and survivors of the original voyage were present for the relaunch. Speeches were made honouring the lives lost and celebrating the efforts that had brought the Titanic back to life. As the ship slid into the water, there was a sense of triumph and closure. The rebuilt Titanic re-entered service with the White Star Line. She quickly became a popular choice for transatlantic crossings, attracting passengers eager to sail on the legendary ship that defied the odds. The enhancements made during the rebuilding process also included state-of-the-art safety features, ensuring that the ship was safer than ever before. For many years, the Titanic sailed the oceans, becoming a symbol of triumph over tragedy, eventually being scrapped alongside her sister, the Jarrow. She was no longer known as the ship that sank on her maiden voyage, but as the ship that was reborn.